City of Evans, August 20th, 2019. I'm Brian Rudy, the mayor. I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Rudy.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Mortensen.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Spear.
Here.
Councilmember Castle.
Here.
Councilmember Neal.
Present.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address City Council on any item not on the agenda this evening? Seeing none, next item is consent agenda. Or excuse me, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 6, consent agenda. Item A, approval of the August 5th, 2019 minutes.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Sorry, I have a correction to the minutes. Let's see, the correction on the minutes from the last meeting, under 8D, it says Councilmember Spear made the motion and Councilmember Spear seconded the motion. It should have been Councilmember Amanda Castle made the motion and Laura Spear seconded the motion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next item, new business. Continuation of the public hearing of the First Amendment, First Amendment Consolidated Service Plan for the North Suburban Metropolitan District. I'll open the public hearing and hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. At your August 5th meeting, the council heard a work session item on a potential amended metro district called North Suburban Metro District. Rod Guerreri, a developer representing Dixie Water, made kind of a high-level presentation to the council about their vision for the amended district. The staff and Dixie Water continue to have conversations so that the staff can really understand what's being proposed. We also have a third-party financial consultant looking at the service plan component of the Metro District and the financials to give us an opinion on that so that we can bring that back to you. So all that work is still in progress. However, the district issued a notice of a public hearing on August 20th. And so that would have been tonight. They did that in anticipation of thinking that they might be able to get this before council tonight. We've told them we still need more time, and we're not going to rush that work. We believe that we can have this back to council by October 1st. So we're recommending tonight that you continue this item to a date certain, which is October 1st, 2019 City Council meeting, and that will avoid the need for additional noticing, which they've already done. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. So while this is a public hearing, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this that cannot be at the October 1st meeting? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to oppose this that cannot be at the October 1st meeting? Seeing none, so I'm just putting it in recess, correct? Or
Yeah, well, you need a motion to continue that day. And yes, you're just keeping the public hearing open until next week.
I'd entertain a motion.
I move to continue the public hearing to consider approval of the amended service plan for the North Suburban Metro District to the October 1st, 2019 City Council meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second to continue the public hearing on the First Amendment Consolidated Service Plan for the North Suburban Metropolitan District to October 1st. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passed. Next item, item B, consideration of the proposed engineering design and construction standards 2019 update.
Thank you, Mayor. The current engineering, design, and construction standards and specs for the city were last updated in 2004. So it's been a while. These are really important to us. These are the basis of the detail for the requirements that we have for both city capital projects, but also private sector developments like our subdivisions. So our new engineering staff, and actually some of our recent engineering staff, have been working hard to update these standards. It's quite a project, as you'll see from the number of pages in your packet for this one item. And with that, I would ask our Assistant City Manager, Randy Reedy, and our City Engineer, Mark Oberschmidt, to give more of an overview of the updated standard specs.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Oops. How do I get to that?
She doesn't have it up yet.
All right, so basically what we spent the last couple of months doing is getting familiar with what's out there now, what are the current construction technologies that people are using that are changing on a regular basis, and trying to bring our 2004 standards up to 2019 technology and design. So we have here what we're going to be looking at are the different sections of the erosion of the city infrastructure. And I say almost invisible because the one thing that people do see are the streets. And some people will notice the erosion control measures that happen on construction projects out on the surface. But for the most part, everything that I and other civil engineers and contractors do is underground and invisible, so people tend to forget about it. So our plan and our goal is to make standards that are high enough and understandable enough that people can design by them, build by them, and they'll last us a long time through the duration of the city. And we have have better roads, better sewers, better water. So ultimately, we get to the new concept that their buzzword now of smart city. So one of the reasons that we develop standards is because if we didn't have standards, people would have, everybody has a different opinion. You ask a lawyer, he'll have a different opinion of another lawyer. You ask an engineer, they're all going to have different opinions about what's better, what's right. So as a city, as a community, we come together and say, okay, what do we want? What do we like? I talk to my maintenance guys, I talk to the contractors, I talk to the engineers, what works for the city of Evans? And this is kind of what we did to create these standards, to create something that's usable for all parties. And I particularly concentrate on the maintenance side of things because the contractor can come in and build it, and in a couple of years or 6 months or whatever, and he'll be gone. The engineer can design it in 6 months or a year, and he'll be gone. The maintenance guys will be out there at midnight opening up a trench, trying to fix a water line. So our goal is to, when they have an input into into a project, into a design, into a standard, we listen to them because they're the ones that are going to have to fix it in the middle of the night. So I talked to all the guys when I got here, and they gave me some really good ideas. They disagreed with me on a couple things, and in some cases I'm going to defer to them, and in some cases I'm going to go with what I think is better. But most of the time I'm going to defer to the maintenance guys because they're the ones that are going to have to fix it if it doesn't create an extremely high cost either to our projects or a long-term investment that we don't want to make. So this is kind of the reason why we have standards and specifications and what we're doing, and we're going to improve them as we go along, is because every year there's going to be new things that happen. There'll be project-specific things that come up that we need to look at in terms of how do we build this. We may not have it in our current specifications, so we may have to modify on a project-by-project basis the things we need moving forward to develop good standards to end up with good projects that last the city a long time. And feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. So what we've done over the last, since I've been here, 4 or 5 months, is kind of like what I talked about, getting together and looking at what we had as a specification and making changes, because specifications change on a regular basis. As we went through with the update to the building code, they change on a regular basis. Standards are updated, codes are changed, even some of the language within the code, in terms of like asphalt. They used to use a grade A asphalt. That's no longer used by anybody, and some of our 2004 specifications still reference that. For other things were referenced that people no longer really install. We don't put a lot of ductile iron pipe in the ground anymore. Most everything is PVC, so we took most of our ductile iron pipe out of the specifications. So things change. And I mentioned a bunch, also with our new up and coming, which will be in our next, or a couple meetings from now, we'll be implementing the multiple MS4 program with related to our storm sewer. These standards that we're developing right now coincide with what those MS4 standards require us to do. So we're in sync with the federal standards and the state standards with what we're doing here. So erosion and sediment control, this is one that most people don't think about, but all that dirt, all that soil, all that stuff that's falling out of your car gets into the storm sewer eventually, and if we don't keep that storm sewer clean, that water gets into the Platte, and it goes downstream to Kersey and other people, and that's their drinking water, so we have to keep it as clean as possible. So we want to make these standards so that construction sites take care of their sites, they keep the dirt on the site as much as possible, it goes into the detention basins, the sediment basins, stays on the site, we keep the roads clean, we keep it out of the storm sewers and ultimately out of the rivers. And this is some of the stuff that we've done here. Like I said, we've made it to match into our MS4 program. We also are referencing, instead of recreating the wheel, we're using a lot of the current details that are out there, developed by the Urban Drainage District. They've been used, they've been implemented, they work. And the ones that we don't think that'll work, we'll take them out of the play and put something in that actually works. And contractors come into play here because they tell us, this doesn't work. We've tried it over and over again, and you guys keep telling us to redo it. This works better, and we don't have to worry about it as much. So if it's low maintenance and it works for the site, that's what we're going to try to go for. Sanitary sewer, one of the things that was not specifically called out in the specs that I've come to trust completely is if we don't have proper compaction in our sewer trenches, doesn't matter what we do with our road, the road's going to fail. In the main trenches, in the lateral trenches, doesn't matter. So what we're implementing is that we're going to have additional testing requirements where the tester is going to have to come out during the sewer installation. They lay the pipe, they bed the pipe, they put the first layer of backfill on that pipe, and then the tester is going to come out and he's going to test compaction. And then a day or so later, he's going to come back and test again because they're going to be continuing to backfill. And that way, it helps us maintain a really good compaction underneath the road, and we get a proper, you don't have that dipsy doodle that you see in all the sewer trenches around town, and where things just, if a contractor's laying more than 1,000 feet of pipe a day, he's not compacting his trenches. So we're going to slow him down a little bit, yes, but we're going to end up with a 20-year road instead of a 10-year road. And also, we've eliminated some things. We're trying to maintain an appropriate list of parts that the contractor can use for a given project, so he doesn't come in with something from we've never heard of, that we've never seen, we don't have, we can't get access to. So if it's not something that's readily off the shelf or easily accessible, we don't want to do it because our operations can't have an inventory of 5,000 different valves, for instance. Right. So we're going to try to limit that to just a few. And manufacturers also come and go. So some manufacturers no longer exist, and some of the guys are, in some of the specs, they'll have a manufacturer that went out of business or was bought out by someone else. So that valve no longer even exists. So that's, again, it reduces our inventory requirements, so it reduces our overhead. Again, these are some similar for the water line, same kind of concept. We're going to try to create an approved product list, and that approved product list will change from year to year because a contractor or a supplier may come in with a different type of pipe that works better for a given condition or a different use. We'll look at that and we'll research the information. We'll talk to other cities to see if they've used it, and then we'll make sure that it works for us. And it may replace an older pipe or an older part, so I don't want to make the list longer. I just want to make the list as concise as possible so our maintenance guys don't have to go shopping around for something that is really hard to get from a local supplier. From the non-potable side, we didn't really do a whole lot with this because most of our non-potable is very similar to our water system. The one thing that we did do with in one of the older details that we had in the system is we had 8 different bedding details, and a bedding detail is basically what kind of material you put around the pipe when you put it in the ground. It's different for concrete pipe, different for plastic, different for steel, or different for ductile. We simplified it into one basic detail. It's a similar material that goes around the pipe. It just goes up and down with the type of pipes. Ductile or concrete pipe only requires it to the spring line of the pipe. plastic, or we have to bury the pipe completely. So it simplifies and the contractor doesn't have to, which one do I pick? Storm sewer, again, state statute changed a couple years back where detention ponds have to drain in 72 hours. So now our code incorporates that. We've incorporated urban drainage and flood control standards, which most of northern Colorado has adopted for simplicity reasons. The only difference between most municipalities is rainfall. And rainfall will vary from Loveland to Evans to Kersey to Sterling. As you go across the state, it changes. And so we incorporate our rainfall patterns for our city, but the other requirements are similar. And they work as a means of maintaining a historic runoff from the different sites. As we develop, we obviously increase the volume of runoff, but if we can reduce that rate to a historic rate, we're not going to have as much of an impact to the downstream users, which is not allowed by state law. Streets, this was probably the biggest change. One of the things that we incorporated into the new street standards is we're going to incorporate fly ash, which is a byproduct of the coal power plants, and you mix it into the subgrade, and it does two things. It strengthens the subgrade, makes it better, increases the strength of it so that you could actually drive on it. It's almost road ready when it's done. The other thing it does is in the springtime, if a contractor's working and building a road and he gets a 2-day gully washer, he's got to come in and start over from scratch. Whereas if he fly ash the road before that rain happens, the likelihood is he won't have to hardly redo anything to that road. It'll be ready to come in and put the base on it. And that, it helps with bridging on any trenches, but it does make the roads a lot better. And where I came from in Wellington, we built roads back in 2004 to 2008 that were failing within 5 years. Since we started the fly ash program in 2012, none of those roads have failed, and I drove through Wellington last week just to look at them again. So there are no failures, no trench settlement, nothing. The roads are in a whole lot better condition, and that's due to the better compaction process, the testing of the compaction, and the fly ash added to the subgrade. The other thing we also did was we had 12 different street cross sections when I got here. We now have 7. There were several that were redundant, that were almost echoes of each other. They didn't really make any sense. We also widened the minimum road from 34 to 38. Then actually, I think we did have one road section that was 27 feet wide. That one went completely away. But 38 feet wide allows you for 2 9-foot parking on the side and a 20-foot drive aisle in the middle. We've run into some issues with parking around town in different subdivisions, and we can't do a lot about that. We're going to look at some possible solutions, but 34-foot wide was just not wide enough to allow adequate access for the emergency vehicles and some parking on the side streets, or on the side of the street. Also, the other thing that we've done with the streets is we've adjusted the thickness of the pavement section. So if a local street doesn't get as much heavy traffic, so it doesn't require as much asphalt and base, so that gets a certain section, but an arterial does. So that gets a deeper section. Similar if you were to look at what they're putting on I-25 right now, it's upwards of 18 to 24 inches thick. Well, we're not going that crazy, but that's because they're driving semis on them all day long. We don't have quite as many semis, but our arterial roads do get a heavy load, especially with a lot of the traffic that we're getting through town. So that's kind of what's happening with the streets. That's Corvina Court, in case anybody's interested. That's the first. That was a repair that we did, and that's what we had to put the fly ash in there because, again, we got some rain, and we would have spent weeks there trying to fix that out, whereas they got it done in maybe a week and a half before it was actually done.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you for increasing the width after the problem we saw in Grapevine Hollow. I really appreciate you updating that standard.
Well, we're going to look at seeing if we can mitigate that somehow, but I haven't thought of anything yet. But we'll see what we can do. Basically, the long and short of it is that good standards and standards that are adhered to by both the development community and the construction community end up in a solid project for the city of Evans. And that's the goal, is to create better standards. And as we go forward with new technologies, there's some things that we probably will incorporate, like pipe bursting and more horizontally and directionally drilling certain things. to mitigate the excessive cost of repairing streets after we put in utilities. We've got a project on the books for next year that we may use pipe bursting, which will be, I think if you'd like to come see it when it comes out, it's a pretty cool operation. And I'll take any questions or comments, ideas. I know it's a lot of pages, and I wouldn't have normally put those in, but apparently you guys have to see them all.
Mark, thank you. Thank you for everyone as well that has helped with this. You sound very knowledgeable. You know exactly what you're doing. And I like the fact that you understand like all the nuances with all of this, because you're assisting the city in essence, making things cost effective in areas that we don't need to kind of continue with the same. And I love the fact that, you're bringing in new ideas that you've worked with to assist our city, especially with the roads, and bringing doing the fly ash, and also bringing additional testing and adding that to the roads, because that is needed. It's like that road with all the undulation. I mean, had we, maybe tested that a second time, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But, learning from those kind of scenarios to move forward and, have a longer, life, like 20 years versus a 10-year road, 10-year road is definitely going to help our city.
Yeah, we did, the IMS guys are out there scanning the streets yesterday and today, and I think they'll be done tomorrow. And I had them go up to North Point 6 to say, show me what that road looks like, because that's brand new.
Right.
It was barely paved a month or so ago. And I want to see that number, and I look where the goal is to say, okay, if that's the standard at 1 year, let's see how long we can keep that standard with new and improved inspection, testing during new construction on the new subdivisions that are coming in.
Not only that, just facilitating the process, because you're, bringing, with construction, there's so many vendors. And like you said, vendors can stay around like usually within 5 years, or they're gone or bought out, and just, bringing that, narrowing that list, and then making sure that we're accessing and being able to have the specific, be able to shop it locally versus having to, wait for things is also great. And I'm excited for that. And I'm excited for the future of Evans.
Thank you.
With you in it.
Other questions or comments?
Mark, I would like to comment on your inventory control. I've worked in that inventory control and purchasing for almost 40 years, and the warehouse when I went down to Alamosa and CDOT, almost 25% of that was filters for different vehicles. So anytime you can consolidate those, cross-reference those, and even cut that number down by 1 or 2 filters, it makes a big difference in consolidation.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Other questions or comments of staff? That was a great presentation.
It was. Thank you.
No other questions or comments? Entertain a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 19-2019, adopting the updates to the City of Evans Design and Construction Standards.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 19-2019. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Reports, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quick couple words on some of our major capital projects. Council may note that 35th Avenue is now completely open. We feel that project came out well. We'll have some final cost and time figures for you when the dust has settled on that. We're also on schedule so far with the 31st Avenue Service Road realignment at 31st Street and Highway 85. And the 37th Street utility project, which is very visible and focal for us. We want to just let council know that we had a good week last week and a good week this week. Those have been key weeks with school opening. The contractor had met some milestones that we had set for getting past the school, and we were grateful for that. The police department was out in force on the first day of school, and I know Friday as well, and they'll be out as long as we need that to assist the contractors, flaggers in keeping that school zone safe. Myself, I can say I've not had complaints about that, but it really is thanks to our residents for their patience, because I know that project is trying, and again, it's on the way as kind of apropos to Mark's presentation, where we're getting that water and sewer line work done this year in good fashion, so that we can, when we come in next year with the overlay project and have a new street, we hopefully won't have to cut it once that new surface is in. So we just need to keep that message out there about where we're going and what the outcome will be for that project. That's all I have tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. City Attorney?
Got
I think you might
I
have
got
a
a
question.
question, Mayor,
Jim.
from
Oh.
Councilman?
Someone in the audience that brought up, was wondering if the 37th Street project was on schedule.
On schedule, they've had some delays. We will have a more formal update for council in a couple of weeks. They've kind of got caught back up to some extent over the past couple of weeks. So we're kind of doing the detail work right now with them on their concerns for time and what we think that should be, but they've started to make more progress, and they're getting back on schedule. But we'll have a more formal update for council probably at your next meeting.
City Attorney?
No real new update. We're just continuing to do more of the same thing that we were doing last time we talked to you. So don't have new problems from our office. It's probably a good thing. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Scott. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address City Council on any item? Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you for being here tonight.